Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callis, episode 658, coming to you on the 19th of June, the year of our Lord 2024. Today we're going to be talking about what's been going on in the world. And before we get to that, let me remind you the best way you can help me help you continue to make a difference, be heard, grow the show, and quite frankly, just make an impact in the local community that you live in is to like, share, and subscribe to this program. As I say, I don't ask for your money. I do ask for a little bit of your time. And if you're feeling particularly froggy, I would appreciate it if you would rate and review this program. I can be found on pretty much any podcatcher, as well as still up at YouTube. And in addition to that, you can join me on the social media of your choice. I have a page and a group at Facebook. I am a pro at Gab, and I still drop in at MeWe. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I did mention yesterday that things are changing up just a wee bit. I got another responsibility I've taken on in my life, which means something's got to give. So for the foreseeable future, as I said yesterday, we're going to be going to three shows, if you will, as part of the program a week until I figure out a way to make something else work. We all have day jobs. Day jobs pay the bills, and you cannot slight your day job, and I will not and cannot do that. If that means something else got to take the pinch, it by all means will be this podcast. It is a labor of love, but it is still labor. All right, here we go on with the program. All right, for those of you that don't know, there are more war thunders, or more thundering of war. How about that? Going on right here, right now. It's bad enough that our Congress has decided that they're going to reinstitute a draft provision. Now, they're not drafting right here, right now, but the Selective Service is being geared up again so that they can and will draft. And apparently, now they're going to draft women too. Now, I want to say, and I feel like I'm stirring a pot that I don't need to stir, and I don't exactly fret over stirring the pot because there are, quite frankly, a lot of pots that deserve to be stirred, but this one, I'm just going to say it. I don't like, nor do I support any kind of draft, period, end of story. If there was a legit invasion of these United States, I am fairly certain there would be enough good men that would step up and volunteer to defend our country. That being said, I have no doubt that there would be a number of women that would also line up to do certain jobs that they are best fit for. I don't think 99% of women have any business being frontline troops. That being said, I don't think that probably 75 to 80% of men have any business being frontline troops. It is a tough job. I'm not capable of doing it. I'm too old, too out of shape, whatever. But if my homeland is invaded, if the great state of Texas was legitimately invaded by hostile forces that were firing upon people, yeah, I'm pretty sure I would volunteer myself. That being said, that's not what we're dealing with. No, we're dealing with the idea that, Russia's at war with Ukraine, Israel's at war with their Arab neighbors in Gaza, and quite frankly, probably all the other Arab neighbors they have, whether they're Jordanian, Lebanese, or Syrian. And those guys are always at war with everybody. So this is not pointing fingers. It's just acknowledging the world we live in. And if we're not careful, we're going to find another front, something else that we can get involved in. Nonetheless, China is still looking to reunify with Taiwan by pretty much any means necessary. Yeah, so when dealing with China, one ought to keep in mind that they don't see any significant difference between the Taiwanese island and their homeland, their conglomerate, their nation. They're all one and the same. So that being said, it's only a matter of time. And these United States are far from united. These United States have what I would call marginal leadership at best. These United States have sacrificed their military, their legitimate military, to the throes of the politically correct. So I'm not feeling super confident that even with the notion of reinstating the draft, that we're going to be able to overcome the problems that were caused upon it. The military should exist and used to exist simply to kill people and blow things up. And it was made predominantly of men that were of the appropriate age to go do those things and do them well. And there are severe consequences long term to most of those men, which gets glossed over all the time, which is regrettable and disgusting all at the same time. But it's a known thing, particularly if you volunteer for this purpose, that is a real outcome that you might have to deal with. And then, of course, we still are dealing with the after effects of what was, referred to for a long time as the Forever War, 20 some years in Afghanistan, for no discernible reason. And, oh, by the way, when we left all that stuff behind, which, of course, has now been refitted to be used against us and our allies. Good choice there, Resident Joe. Let's go with Resident Joe. Okay. So this is where we're at. And, the notion that we're going to be able to force women to serve in the military and that somehow that's an improvement. I mean, what a thing. And again, this is where it's like, yes, there are specific roles that military or not, women are exceptionally good at. But I don't think you sacrifice the whole of the military just to make happy 1% or 0.5% of women that might want to do something like that. And I certainly don't think we should degrade and think so little as women or of women as to lump them in with men that historically that's their job. So I know there's some people that are, upset. How dare you, callous? No. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. It's because we value women that we don't throw them into the meat grinder. But the reality is we should be valuing our men, maybe not equally, but also that we don't throw them into unnecessary conflicts or unnecessarily endanger them or put them at risk for no discernible reason and certainly no positive outcome. But that's the world we live in. Again, war is everywhere. And we in the United States haven't figured out a way to stay out of the middle of it. Now, some of that might be directly related to the idea that we're leaderless, right? We have leaders. We have people that pretend they're leaders. We have things going on in the background, pushing and pulling things to get us to where we're at and where we're supposed to go. But none of those people are really truly elected representatives. None of those people actually work for we the people. No, they work for an entirely different organization or different group of people. And I can hear you people now. No. This cabal, for lack of a better way of describing it, has always existed in one way, shape, or form, pulling and pushing things behind the scenes. And they're not bound to any one ethnic group or any one religion, so just calm down. It is the group of people that think they're better than that, and they're better than you. Some of them are indeed elected officials or appointed officials. Some are not. Some just have more money than they could possibly spend in generations, and some are not. And if you doubt me, you're not paying attention. Don't get mad at me. I'm just stating what is obvious to a whole lot of people, and they're completely content with us being sent to the slaughter. Some have referred to them as war pigs. Okay, fine. I'm not justifying that language, but it is what it is. So while we're talking about that issue, while this is at hand, right? The many wars, the pushing and the pulling to get into more wars, and the human meat grinder. Let me just say, it's not lost on me that, love him or hate him, old Vlad Putin has put forth a peace proposal. Now, no peace proposal is something that everybody's excited about. And many times it's kind of a lose situation for the person that doesn't have the upper hand. But I'll put it to you this way. Which is worse? Would you rather give up a couple of regions that are predominantly Russian anyway and don't actually want to be part of Ukraine? Or would you rather fight until you've got nothing left? And I'm not saying Putin's a nice guy. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm not saying anything about the guy other than clearly he loves his country, he loves his people, and he wants what he thinks is best for them, whether they like it or not, and he's going to do what's necessary in order to make that happen. Unlike Resident Joe, who sold out the United States to the Ukrainians, he sold out the United States to the Chinese, and God knows who else he sold this out to for reasons that quite don't even make any sense, but that's where we're at. And if you doubt me, that laptop that everybody dismissed as little as 4 years ago has now been proven 100% accurate and true. And you got to give that 10% to the big guy, which apparently now the big guy can't even hardly walk down the stairs or know which side of the stage he's supposed to exit from. But hey, I digress. Here we are. Again, poor leadership or no leadership, because we are basically rudderless and leaderless. And that is a result of our own poor choices in allowing ourselves to be put in this position. But here we are. And so Putin, Vlad Putin, is offering a way out. Are we going to be smart enough to take it? That's really the question. Or are we going to continue to bleed the Ukraine dry? Are we going to continue to put the Ukrainian people in a bad situation? I mean, and again, I'm not saying either side is good here. I'm not taking anybody's side. I'm just saying there is a way out. And I don't know that our own leadership quite grasps that or the importance of that. I wonder if they even care. And here on the home front, here in these United States, we had Resident Joe decided you took on a bunch of debt to go to college to get a useless education, bitterness studies, if you will, and we're going to forgive that debt. Not sure how that works or where he got the authority to do it, but apparently, to a degree, that's happened. I don't understand that. I don't understand that, but here we are. And if that wasn't bad enough, now Resident Joe has decided that he's going to basically just say, hey, if you've been here for 10 years and you married somebody, I'm holding up the scare quotes here, well, we're just going to go ahead and make you legal. Now, to a point, I understand the argument. And you can make a pretty good emotional argument that this is a net positive. But much like the amnesty of the 80s, it only breeds more problems. Much like the DACA nonsense, it only breeds more problems. Much like the last 3 years where we've done absolutely nothing to curtail or monitor who's coming here and what they're up to, this is not going to end well for us. There is a dynamic invasion. The only thing missing is for these people to actually take up arms. Now, that's a good way to subvert, invert, and destroy a nation. If you invade them but don't actually fire a shot, you can destroy it. You can rot it out from the inside. And believe you me, these folks know exactly what they're doing, the ones that are pulling and pushing the things behind the scenes. The foot soldiers they're sending in, by and large, don't know. They've probably been given some promises of different things that are going to happen. And it's really hard to blame somebody that lives in that third world hole that, has been referenced multiple times in the last 6 or 8 years. Of course they want a better life. Of course they want to go somewhere else. Of course they think that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And guess what? We've set ourselves up for failure. And when I say we, I mean our government. And when I say our government, I will say the apparatchiks, right? The professional class, those that would sell us out in a heartbeat, if for no other reason that they just want to maintain their power and their control. And they would rather rule over the ashes of what was once these United States than be out of power. Now let me ask you, who is actually on our side in that regard? Who is actually looking out for we the people? I think it's self-evident. I think it's obvious. There are very few people that work, live, or serve in D.C. that are looking out for you and I, that are looking out for we the people, that are looking out for their home states even. I mean, I named some of them off just the other day, and I would stand by that, and I would freely admit it's likely I missed some others. And I've talked about the idea that these federal law enforcement agencies, one, that are unconstitutional, and two, are detrimental to liberty with maybe nominal improvement to security, those people don't care about you either. Everything they see is a target. Everything they see is an other. Everything that they deal with is the enemy. I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, look, I served peacetime Navy. I served with guys who did see what would be called nominally action in the first Gulf War. They were on a ship and they had some things happen that, kind of put them on edge. These guys don't really have any hatred for the civilian general public. They just don't. But if you're a ground pounder, somebody that served in the Marines or the Army, or perhaps did some kind of special forces stuff from the other branches, and you dealt with a legitimate enemy, that affects you for life. And you see anybody that doesn't wear the same flag or the same badge or the same patch as another. And we've heavily recruited from those ranks of the military to go into federal law enforcement, to go into local law enforcement. And I can't say that's been for the best outcome, because you're coming with a mindset that it's us versus them. It's anybody that's not wearing this badge is the enemy. Now, maybe that's fair. Maybe it's not. It's definitely a generalization, and it's not meant to say all the time with everyone, but it's an issue. And I think it's especially prevalent on the federal aim, because those people generally don't spend any time around we the people. They don't really have to spend a lot of time with quote unquote normal people. I mean, if you're in standard law enforcement in a local town, 75% of whatever you do is going to be around other people that are not in law enforcement in theory, or certainly extend friends and family that are not in law enforcement. So you have a relationship outside of your team. But even then, it's tenuous sometimes for some of these guys, especially like undercover guys or guys that do SWAT or something like that. And they get isolated. They separate themselves out. They get very insular. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's a survival mechanism, and there's a certain amount of respect that you have to give. But on the flip side, you don't want the people that are supposed to enforce the law, that are supposed to follow the law, to see anybody else out there as the enemy or a potential enemy. That's not a good situation. That's not going to work well for us in the long run. So when I reflect back on the idea that they're going to bring back a draft, or the selective service to prepare for a draft, I wonder, how did we get here? Could it be there's a whole lot of folks out there that already served, they already did their duty, and they don't want to do it anymore? Or they know that, hey, this kind of messed me up, and I'd like to have a normal life. Or, hey, just got over all that stuff from overseas, and I'm going to come home and I'm going to reenact it at a local level. And I'm going to put me on an edge to where I can't even deal with my friends and family, because every time I close my eyes, I see something else. I mean, that's a real concern, don't you think? And when you look at the grander scale, right, we have our court system that comes in and basically deems things legal or illegal, and we're not allowed to question it or do anything. The states are supposed to be supreme. The states are supposed to make those calls, but we don't. We don't take the authority that's inherent to the state. The question is why? Because we just defer everything to the courts. I mean, the Congress has been doing it. The legislatures have been doing it in the states. Well, why should we take a stand on anything? We can just toss it over to the courts. And the courts are running with this, by the way. And they're coming up with some really bad decisions, some really detrimental opinions, and you can't question it, which is ridiculous, by the way. I want people to question bad decisions. I want people to look at these opinions and scrutinize them. Again, the states have a right and a duty and authority to say, yeah, you made your opinion, but we're not going to go there. And I wonder where they're at. I wonder why they won't do it. I wonder what lacks from these folks that they just continuously let us down, and they allow us to get sucked further and further down this way. It's not a good thing. We have to deal with the idea that there's wars all around us, that it's bad enough that our leaderless government has decided that we need to sacrifice our own people at a new and exciting clip. And they're preparing not to even pay attention to the fact that it's historically been a male role. Now, that may have something to do with the fact that they're not even sure what a woman is anymore. I'm not sure. And then when there's ever a question, they just kick it over to a court and let some people in a black robe make a decision, and we're never supposed to question it. I mean, it's almost like we've nominated them to be high priests and they speak for the Lord. Well, yeah, no, I don't agree. I don't see that at all. I'm not comfortable with that. I must push back on that. That's a problem. The reality is we have a responsibility to each other. We have a responsibility to our community as a whole. We have a responsibility to our city, our county, and most specifically to our state. So, again, we look at this national scene here where courts are literally making stuff up as they go along, where our leadership is currently selling us out any which way but loose. Okay, I had to put a movie reference in there, sorry. And the world is doing all sorts of crazy things. Now, there is a glimmer of light. There have been some races that have gone decidedly populist or nationalist. Now, that is a mixed bag. I will be the first to acknowledge that. There's problems inherent there as well. But right now, I'm far more concerned, far more worried about the globalist vision of the future that affects us all and hurts us all and puts us all in a bad spot. That is far more concern, far more eminent, and far more dangerous, in my opinion, than any kind of populist nationalist movement that may exist. Mostly because in today's day and age, even if you are a quote-unquote quasi-nationalist, you want to maintain your own space. You're not looking to go conquer the world. You're not looking to go subjugate other people. I think we've all learned those lessons from the past. Of course, I could be just guessing. When I look at the bigger picture, I look at it myself and I say, I don't want a war. Is it that much to ask that we can just maintain peace? Is it that much to ask that we can just be a non-interventionist for once? Is it that much to ask that we just set aside minor differences and live and let live? Is it somehow a foreign concept that we don't have to stick our nose in everybody's business all the time? Can we just jettison the Yankee viewpoint that we know what's best for you and we're going to make sure you do it whether you like it or not? These are all very valid questions. There are things that we need to look at. And when we look at what's going on worldwide, we're not the only ones that are run by the Yankee vision. Now, maybe it's just the socialists and communists that have taken over so many countries, and they think they have a right to subjugate anybody that disagrees with them because they're right. And clearly, everybody else is wrong. But who am I to say? What do I know that they don't? Well, I'm just a guy. I live in McKinney, Texas. I love my wife. I love my life. I care deeply and love my family. I love my community. And I want what's best for my family, my community, and quite frankly, Texas. So at this point, let me just dial it in a notch, right? We got all these things going on in the world, much of which, if not almost all of which, is way beyond our control. But let's just focus on the thing that you can control, the thing that you can affect. Look out for yourself and your family first and foremost. I don't know what that looks like in your life. Maybe you have a couple of months worth of money stored away in an account or in your home somewhere. Maybe you've got the ability to provide food, shelter, and water beyond that. I don't know. But you got to put those priorities first. You got to put your family first. Now, look, a guy like myself, with all the time and energy I invest in my job, in politics, and this podcast, that kind of leaves me a little short from time to time on what I ought to be investing in my family. So even myself, I am guilty of that. I come up short myself. I'm asking you to not make that same mistake. I'm asking you to not do worse than me. I'm asking you to consider What is it that you value, and how should you hold to that versus what's going on in the world? If you spend all your time worrying about what's going on in the world, what's going on in DC, what value are you to those that are closest to you? What value do you offer to your community around you? Your priorities, aside from any religious or monetary or job-related priorities, should be your family and your community. I would love to see that being preeminent. I would love to see, and I'm going to use the term, but understand where I would love to have a nationalist point of view. We care about these United States over the world. We care about Texas over these United States. We care about Collin County or perhaps McKinney over Texas. Well, maybe not over Texas, but equal to Texas, right? We care for our own family and our own community even more so than that. Those are the priorities. Those are the things that we invest in. The other stuff will fix itself if we start right here, right now. And with that, I'm always trying to end positive, and sometimes it's a challenge. This has been According to Callus. I encourage you, do what you can with what you got, where you're at. And that's not my quote. I don't even remember where I got it from. And I will see you on the other side.